both of you have made very gutsy choices in your career. How dangerous was it for you to do this, Matthew?
This play?
This play, this character.
Well, I don't know. I think one danger seems to have been that some people would think we were somehow cashing in or trying to find a similar vehicle that was. I think the danger to me was only that there would be a lot of expectations, and that it seems on the surface to be somewhat similar to the producers. So that always scared me a little bit. But those are things you think about. But truthfully, I just think it's a wonderful play, and I love working with Nathan and Joe, and I don't get too involved in how will this look, or is this dangerous? I just think this is very good material. It makes me laugh. I really like it, and it seems like a kind of natural progression.
Joe, in past interviews, I think in our interview for the LA Times, you mentioned, I don't have a style, I have a sensibility that often starts with a visual hook. Was there a visual clue to your production of The Odd Couple? Anything that comes to mind?
No. I was lying to you at the time, clearly. No, this was Nathan called me, when was it, last summer, or the summer before last, and sort of presented the idea, and I think one of the other things that I said to you is that it's always the writing, it's the language, it's the poetry. I think people think that The Odd Couple doesn't have real poetry to it, but it does. It has a rhythm and a beat, and so that's interesting to me, the musicality of his writing.
Nathan, you were in Laughter on the 23rd Floor and Brighton Beach.
No, he was in Brighton Beach.
He was in Brighton Beach.
Yeah,
you were in the National
Broadway,
Company.
I did the national tour of Broadway Bound.
Of Broadway Bound. Yeah. Is there a rhythm, what Joe was just talking about, this sort of rhythm, a way of talking, a particular type of comedy that keys you into the characters that Neil has in the writing?
Well, yes, they do speak in a certain way. You have to approach it as you would any play, but there is a musicality to it, and it's undeniable as you're doing it, or certainly if you're waiting to come on and you're listening to it, you go, well, it's like music, it's like listening to a great symphony, and but it's very natural, and it should seem very natural dialogue, and yet there's a musicality to it, and that adds to, which is why, and it's also funny. But it always has to come from just a guy talking, trying to express something, and the danger is to play into it's funny dialogue and trying to make it funny. You can't. You always have to make it real, but you can certainly, when you listen to it, you hear it immediately.
Does this mean that there's no room for improvisation, that you've really got to stick to the text religiously?
Yeah, sure. Because if you add something or a word, even a word, or you change a word, you feel it. It doesn't quite work as well. So, yes.
Matthew, how does this world of The Odd Couple compare to the world of Max Dugan Returns or Dugan, if I'm mispronouncing that?
I think it's Dugan.
Is it Dugan?
Yeah.
Brighton Beach Memoirs or Biloxi Blues. Is there sort of the early Neil Simon in this for you?
Yeah, this is, I think the later ones, Brighton Beach and Biloxi, are a little bit more, he'd been analyzed, and it was about his boyhood and why things led to other things, and, and this is a little more just straightforward, It's all there. You could look at this very Freudianly, I suppose, but later he was a little more self-aware, I think. But the language is the same. It's the same guy. Neil Simon is a person, which I didn't. I remember when I first auditioned for Brighton Beach Memoirs, and they were like, and I was like, oh, it's a Neil Simon play. Wow, I'm reading for a Neil Simon play. And I got up on stage and they were like, and that's Neil Simon out there. The glasses is a guy named Neil Simon, and he wrote all the Neil Simon plays are written by Neil Simon. And because I thought they came from a factory called Neil Simon, you know, like, because it became like a type of comedy or a kind of writing. Partly because he wrote so many of them, or everybody imitated him, and it became like a style. So I was even surprised that it was, you know, one guy. But that said, he really is an individual, and there are sounds to his writing that are the same in Brighton Beach or this, and it's been a real pleasure to, you know, rehear some of his rhythms.
And you got the roles, didn't you? Like within a week or even the same day? You
The
learned
same
that you were-
day.
The same day you were going to be in Max Dugan and,
yes.
and Brighton.
I read my third callback for Brighton Beach Memoirs. I read for it in the morning, and they said, will you take a look at this? These are scenes from a movie. I'd never been in a movie. And they gave me some pages, and they said, can you stay and read for this? And I said I had another appointment. So they said, well, come back at 4 or something like that. So I managed to take the movie script and take it, you know, across the street, and I read the whole thing. I tried to get a head start. I came back, I read for the movie, then I read again for the play, and by the end of that day, the casting director said, well, you did well. And I said, really? And she said, I said, did I get that movie? And she said, you got both. So you're the lead in a Broadway show, and you have your first movie, and you've never had anything, basically.
All right.
Well, except, that's not true, Torch Song Trilogy.
Right.
But still, it was, anyway, good night, everybody. I'd like to end it like that.
What were your first impressions of Neil? Personal impressions, respective personal impressions of Neil. Joe, you...
Of Neil?
Yeah, of Neil.
You know, I think the most amazing thing about him, I mean, as Matthew said, he's a person. He has all of the technique and the skill of a true master craftsman, but somehow, in the midst of, you know, this career that spanned decades, he somehow managed to keep this sense of a beginner's awe, you know, and so he doesn't take anything for granted. He is, you know, constantly delighted and surprised when it's going well, but he doesn't, it's the strangest thing. He's like a professional novice. You know, he really is, it's amazing how he's been able to maintain it.